Welcome everyone. This is part 2 of my Gnome House build. If you want to check out where I actually built the house, go watch the first video in this series, and I will show you how it was constructed. At this point, I'm showing you the book that this is based on, and it's Gnomes by someone whose name I can't pronounce, and I gotta do all that stuff. So all the things that go inside the house. So I'm starting in the throne room. I figured that was an easy place to start. It's a little intimidating making these things. Like, I needed to make a tiny ornate gnome toilet, and I wasn't really sure how to go about it, but I figured I would start by figuring out the scale. But speaking of scale, this is my concept of scale. So it starts with SimCity Bowser, and there's a micro machine, and then there's a lady assassin, and then there's my gnome, and then there's Carl Weathers. Hey Carl. R.I.P. dude. And then there's Ferdinand V. He was a king in Spain. This is not a political endorsement. I know nothing about him. And then there's a Sylvanian. And then there's Tippy Turtle, who, he's the first sculpture I made. Pretty unique. And then there's Tiny Chef. And so that's the scale I work off of. So this is gnome scale. That's what I figure, you know, this room is like a little smaller than it should be, I think, based on the size of the main room. But I'm just cutting out templates to figure out where things will go. And I'm starting with this tiny leaf bin. Basically, gnomes, like, poop in a toilet, but there's no water. They don't have, like, plumbing per se. They just have holes. So, they poop. And, they throw a leaf down the hole after they poop, and that, I guess, makes compost, that will maybe feed the tree that their house is built underneath. It's an interesting system, for sure. This is Princess Megan, of course. She goes wherever she pleases. So I'm making this little leaf bin. I don't show it in the end, but it's just a little box, and I just took leaves out of my yard and mushed them all up and threw them in there, and yeah, for gnome poop composting. And gnomes like to also read magazines, or their equivalent, when they are on the toilet, so I'm making a magazine holder. I don't know what kind of magazines they read. I actually screwed this up, I'm showing you. I messed up the scale. I made like a huge thing, which I do a few times in this build for some reason. I just like couldn't get my head around this tiny scale. And now, I'm gonna make a texture roller. You can buy these, of course, but I'm gonna make one. And this is just air dry clay and a spice jar. It's not really a jar, it's plastic. Spice container that doesn't have spices in it anymore. And you want to make sure your air dry clay is nice and smushy, I guess. Damp, moist. And that's a texture, I don't know what those are called. It's for clay though. And it's going to give me a nice texture of stones, which I'm going to use to make the oven. So I'm just checking the diameter to make sure I have a long enough piece of textured clay. And then I'm going to glue this onto that little spice container, and then voila, I will have a texture roller. So, a little bit of PVA, smush it all around. PVA actually helps it not shrink too much, because that can be a problem with air dry clay. So I just glue it down, and then it leaves, it's kind of a gnarly seam. So I tried to fix this. I didn't really do a very good job, but I did try. That's what's important. And now I'm starting on that gnome toilet. They are really into their toilets. I don't understand why it's such a fancy toilet, but they take their toilets very seriously, and so should I when making a gnome house. It's gotta have a serious toilet. So this is just Sculpey Primo. And I'm just winging it. seeing what looks good, what seems like it would work. I didn't use any glue. I'm just kind of relying on the tackiness of the clay to hold the bits together, which worked fine. This is the back of the throne. I thought about making this out of wood, but I'm not very good at carving, and I thought it would be super hard because it's all really tiny. So instead of carving from wood, I decided I would make it out of clay and just build up the detail rather than carve out the detail. I think this worked pretty well. It's actually really fun too. It's not very hard to make something really cute out of clay. You don't have to be particularly talented. If you just have the right little bits and bobs, like circle cutters are really helpful. There's a little bit of dental molding in the front, and that's my super cute gnome toilet. I think it turned out really well. I paint that near the end. So now I'm working on the gnome's oven. And that's what I made the texture roller for, but I gotta start with a box. I'm kind of figuring out the chimney as well. So like most of the things I build, it starts with fiberboard, cereal box, and I make a box. And then because this is an oven, it needs firebox, which is more of a fireplace term, but it is like a wood-fired oven, I guess. So I'm building out basically a little box inside this box, which is where the fire would go. And I did try to figure out how to add some lighting to this tiny little box, which would have been super cute, but I couldn't get it to work out with the chimney and the way the roof lifts off the building. It just wasn't happening, so too bad. But it is technically there. I don't think you should start a fire in here, but I made a little cooktop. I added a surround as well. And I'll tell you, it's a little short. I had to build it up later, but you'll see. So now I'm getting my clay ready for my texture roller. So this is what will go on the oven itself. Again, it's just air dry clay. And I hit that seam, which I had to kind of fix because I did such a bad job of it. No big deal. I think it turned out pretty good. And I'm gonna wrap this around my little oven structure. And in case you're bored, I've got the catty cam here. We got a new cat, maybe a month or two ago, maybe 2 months now. She adopted us. She was like living on the streets, and she decided she wanted to be our cat. So we took her in, and she's had all of her shots and things, but she's kind of scrawny. She looks like a little street cat. Her name's Brownie. She's watching birds out the window. She's trying to figure out her place in this household. The other cats haven't totally accepted her yet. And I'm just gluing the clay onto my little oven. I gotta make the backsplash, I guess you would say. I'm not really sure how this oven works. Like, I don't know how it vents. I don't know how they don't just die of carbon monoxide poisoning or whatever, but somehow, maybe magic is at play. That's my oven. And I've got a picture in the background. It's not from the book, that's a different picture, but in this particular deployment of an oven, they did stone and this big venti bit above, and this is where I built the height up a little bit. And that's just foam core. And I'm gonna shorten that piece down too. I do this all just by appearance. I hold it up and it doesn't look right, I change it. You can see Brownie has clawed me up with love. That's my oven with the vent bit on top. It's like a mantle and maybe a vent also, but there's no venting going on, so. This is watered down modeling paste. You just water it down so it's a little more flowable, I think the word would be. And I feel like I'm making a little sandwich here, like maybe a little ice cream sandwich, some kind of dessert. And you let that dry, and then I like to sand it a bit to knock down the high parts so that it is not so pokey. And then it kind of looks like stucco. And now I'm building the chimney vent thing that will go on top of the oven. It would be a vent if it did any venting, but it doesn't. I rounded it off with a chopstick. A chopstick is a super handy thing to have around, like a round, nice round, fancy chopstick. Always useful. Then I had to figure out how to make this thing flare at the bottom in 3 directions, which I just didn't know how to do. So this is the way I figured out to do it. There's probably smarter ways, but this is how I did it. See, it flares out 3 ways. So I end up having to just cut off that excess because my brain, it's like the only way my brain could figure it out. It worked. So now I gotta cut a hole in my roof. I didn't want to do it initially, but you gotta do it eventually. I mean, you wouldn't have to, but I decided to. So I made a little template that included my angles. And now I'm just cutting in kind of a test angle into my chimney so I can see what this is gonna look like and make sure I get the positioning right. Now, these are just findy holes so that I can figure out where I need to go on the outside. And that is a beautiful cutting job that I did with my Dremel. And it looks horrible, but like you won't see it at the end, so it's fine. And it fits. I had to cut it bigger later, but it mostly fits. You can see how wonky my chimney is. Now I'm doing some more modeling paste, making more stucco texture. I screwed this up. I didn't think you'd be able to see the back of this chimney, but you can, because it's outside the roof. Oh well. It's still pretty cute. More sanding. So now moving on. I'm making a table. They have a cute little table, and it has bench seating, and there are chairs. They're not in this picture. Oh, there's a butt. This book's weird. There's another bench I gotta make. There are chairs, but the chairs are too hard. I couldn't draw them, and so I didn't make them. Maybe I'm a failure. I don't know. I made a lot of other stuff of like middling quality. I have to live with myself. This is just a bead that I cut in half and sanded down the top of to serve as my bench legs. That worked out pretty well. These beads are kind of like Cheerio shaped, referring to the cereal. It's a pretty convenient bead shape. They're wooden, so you can cut them easily. If you ever see Cheerio beads, definitely pick them up. So that was a picture of a well. This is where my well is going to go. It's different depending which version of the book you read or the show you watch. I did make the one well that was the wrong size, so that was my latest scale fail. So now I'm doing it a lot smaller with matchsticks, and I just use my cutting mat to help me make the cuts. used a wire and a seed bead. This one doesn't operate. It's not as good, but it is appropriately scaled, so you gotta take what you can get, I guess. And I made a little well bucket and glued it to my hand for unknown reasons. Made some shelves to go over the doors. This feels like a super cottagecore detail. Scandinavian, I would say, although I've never been outside. Well, no, that's not true. I've never been to a Scandinavian country. I got distracted into this build. Stardew Valley released, they released 1.6, and obviously I had to go check that out, and you know, it's hard. There's just not enough time in the day. Back on track. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna make a bathtub. This is that kind of gooey stuff that you can make into a mold that I can never remember what it's called. And it stuck to paper towel, but it was fine. And then I have this little rock that was like the perfect shape. So I'm just making a mold that I can tuck my sheet of clay into to make my little bathtub. This worked pretty well. I had not actually done this kind of mold before, but I think it worked really well. This is a tiny bathtub. It doesn't have to be perfect or even particularly good. Sorry, gnomes. You deserve better than me, but you got me. Speaking of tubs though, north of the border, he has a video with Terry the Octoskull, and he makes an amazing bathtub. It's like the best bathtub. My bathtub is trash. Just go watch his bathtub after you watch this video. It's very talented. See, look at this thing. It'll do. Now I'm gonna make some doors. There's bedroom and bathroom doors. They have 2 bathrooms. They have one bathroom for the toilet and one for the tub. I don't know. And then there's these little doors that go over the sleeping alcoves. And sandy, sandy, sandy. I carved in some texture to make the doors look a little more interesting. I did this after painting because I didn't want to fill in my grooves. I think it added some weathering. And now I'm making a dowry chest. Dowry is like a thing you get when you marry a lady, and apparently gnomes are into that. They also have a king, so they're kind of old-fashioned, you know? Maybe a little medieval. Turned out pretty cute. And I made a bathroom vanity, same techniques. Just little boxes. And now I'm making bedding for the sleeping alcove. This is just felt, sheet felt, that I'm cutting pieces out of. So I made kind of like a little base, and now I'm stitching together a pillow. Tiny little pillow. And I'm stuffing some, I don't know, quilt padding, I guess they probably call it. Stuffing some of that in there, and then I stitch it up. And that makes us a tiny pillow. They have to share pillows because it's too tiny to make 2. So it's like a body pillow for these gnomes. And I felt like doing a teeny bit of embroidery. So I thought I would make them kind of like coverlets for their bedding instead of the flannel things that are in the pictures. I don't know why my camera did this. Those turned out really cute. Now I'm gonna make this buffet thing. It's pretty big. It's like one of those furniture pieces that your parents like really want you to take when they die, and you're like, I live in an apartment. How? It's huge. So I'm just building it from the bottom up. And it's easier that way. If you kind of break it into pieces and you think about it in sections, then it's easier to do each piece individually and kind of piece it together, I think. So that was my technique. So I made some little boots. And now I'm making the shelves. And there's decorative trim on the front that I didn't show, but I created some little decorative trim out of these little cereal box pieces. And I put a back on it and added some drawer fronts. And now I'm just carving that top piece pretty poorly, actually. I don't think it particularly looks like what it's supposed to, but at that scale, who cares? Now I gotta make some plates and silverware, of course out of clay. I'm just figuring out what size I need to do. There's probably videos on YouTube that are like really good that show you how to make plates and stuff, and I didn't watch any of them, so I'm coming at this with a beginner's mind. I think they turned out alright. I just kind of layered up some clay and then smushed down a circle in the middle. I think they worked out okay. The spoons. I'm carving them, I'm just like freehanding them. I think the spoons turned out pretty like terrible. But, you know, these weren't made in China out of like some perfect form that they crank a million out every year. Like, these are handmade by a craftsman. So they're a little more like unique. This is just a little cutting board. I'm showing you the list I was working off of. This project was crazy. There's just a million little things to make. I'm moving on now to the Gnome basket backpack. This is just like a tiny little backpack that David the Gnome would wear. And he would gather things, I don't know, like animal hair. Because they use doe hair for like insulation and stuff. I forget what else. Maybe to make their little furry boots. So I'm just kind of, I use my extruder and I got a big long rope. And then I'm just stacking it up, coiling it up. To make this little baskety guy. And I tried to add a little bit of texture, so it's not just drab and plain. That's what kind of sells it. So I did some crisscrosses. I think it turned out pretty good. A little size check. Oh yeah, that's good stuff. And I find anytime you're working with clay, you should definitely make yourself a weird friend to hang out with. Look at that guy. It's just fun. This is a gnome hookah. He smokes something. I can't remember what. David, that is. David the Gnome. I don't want to glorify that, so we won't talk about it anymore. Now I'm making a cricket prison. For as lofty as these gnomes are about how humans are so terrible and they're like bad for the forest, they're bad for the environment, whatever. Like, I agree with all those things. That's fine. Humans suck. But they had a cricket prison. Like, they use crickets for like their security system and they kept them in this little cage and they're like, oh, but we feed them, so they like it. And that's just crap. So, yeah. So I built myself a cricket prison, but as you will see, there's not going to be any crickets in there because they sprung out. So it is going to be an empty cricket prison. Free the crickets. And now I'm to the painting part. So I built all this stuff and then I had to paint it all. And I've got a recommendation here. Atbell makes troll sculptures that are amazing, that look a lot like the trolls from David the Gnome, the book and the show. So you should totally check out his channel if you want to go see some sculptures made by like a really funny Swedish guy. Who doesn't, right? Who doesn't want to watch that? So I made a rug. I made some tiny clay boots. Like I said, I just had to make like a million little things for this. And then I had to paint them all. It was tough. It's a hard life. Now I'm just painting my chimney, my oven. Now I'm painting the oven. I didn't end up doing a wash. I wanted this to look a little cartoonish, not too realistic. I added a little grate to the front, just made out of cardboard. These doors are really hard to paint. I sketched the drawing on first and then painted it. Not great, not great. The toilet, I think the painting turned out pretty good on the toilet. Toothpick made it a lot easier. This is like an approximation, I would say, of the paint job on the fancy toilet. But even just adding a bunch of dots made it look a lot fancier, right? It's pretty fancy. Good stuff. And this is that dowry chest again, where they store their linens, I guess. Again, just a really detailed painting that I did kind of a mediocre job of. But I got a few things glued in. I got the lighting glued in here. And now I just gotta cut this off the base. The house is actually on piers if you look at the drawings for it, so I gotta build some piers. Piers are just like stones, like stone foundation blocks that you can put a house upon. If you think about this house being underground, it makes sense that it would not be on the ground, kind of, but it's still underground. So I don't know how effective this is really going to be. Like, I feel like this house would just rot into nothing within like a year, but there I made a little structural repair. I kept breaking the same beam in my attic because I kept grabbing the house by this very flimsy beam, so I added a stir stick to the back of it so it would stop breaking. And now my piers are all glued on, so my house is raised up, and that means I can put some stairs on the front. And I don't think you should make stairs this way. I did it this way, but you should not do it this way. And I will not do it this way again, because I ended up with some janky stairs. They are crooked. But, you know. Just glue them on. It's fine. So in the first build I showed how I installed these lights, but I didn't really install them, I just taped them in. So here I'm actually gluing them in to make them semi-permanent. I wasn't sure if you could use hot glue on wire lights, but you can. It did not affect the lighting. And my oven is floating. I'm doing a little test fit here, and my oven is floating in the bottom, so I had to cut the hole bigger, and now I have a giant hole on my roof. So this is a good opportunity to add some chimney flashing, which is a nice detail anyway. So I just used EVA foam. I put a cap on the chimney. Cap? That's not what that's called. And then a little bit on, like, kind of a gasket around it, so I could still lift the roof off, but then sneak it back on. And then if you have 4 or more stairs in the US, you have to have a railing. So I had a railing, even though, I mean, I'm in the US. Gnomes are in Scandinavia, wherever that is. Just kidding, I know where that is. They have a gong. That's like how you ring their doorbell. It's a gong. Cannot imagine. I think that would be really alarming if someone shows up at your house and bangs a gong. Now I'm just staining everything with the coffee stain, same as I used in the original build video. Probably not light fast, but okay. And this is a pan pastel. I got one of these because I wanted to try it out. And I think it's alright. I don't know how this is any different from just pastels that you get in a box that are like in little squares, little words. I don't know how it's any different. It's way more expensive. So I can't really recommend it. I'm adding some moss here because of cuteness, but also because this house is underground and I think it would be mossy. And I think moss can grow underground. So it feels like this house would have a lot of it. Like maybe that's all it would be, is all moss on the outside, but I just did a little bit. I wanted to do mushrooms, but I didn't have anywhere to put them because there's no ground. Here I'm jamming in some plates. It is pretty fun after you build furniture like this to actually like put accessories on the furniture. Like this is some real like dollhouse vibe stuff. See my janky silverware. Still turned out pretty good. Alright, it's time to move in. You can see my little candles. Those are just polymer clay. And I'm gonna get everything installed. Here's our well. Which gave me some trouble. Had a little trouble getting that to go in nicely. This is all so tiny. It's actually just a pain to do all of it because it's so freaking tiny. So cute. Oh no, I fell over. Please, please stay. Thank you. Cricket prison, check. There's that dowry chest. So tiny. The little boots. They might be my favorite part of this whole build. I love these furry little boots. God, they're so cute. I made a little broom. Now I'm putting in the buffet. Got my janky bathtub. Vanity mirror. Little candle for the corner. There's our toilet. Some accessories around the oven. Got my little rugs. Book, table. Little backpack. That's it, you guys. That's my gnome house. I realized though that my lighting was blocked off by these doors, so I kind of had to wrench them open. But you can't really see those back rooms very well now. That was kind of a bummer. I didn't see that coming, but here's the inside with the lighting. You can see some of it. I don't think that roof would keep out rain. Good thing it doesn't rain underground, right? These poor gnomes probably have black lung. Black lung? No. What do you get from black mold? Asthma. They have breathing troubles. Very damp environment. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. I welcome any feedback in the comments. You can check out David the Gnome. It's actually on YouTube if you want to go watch the show. It's weird. It's old, but really cute. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll keep them coming.